Used to be a hustler. I used to be a runner. Came from the gutter. Now we be on that struggle. Used to be in a life full of crime. I gotta hustle and do whatever it takes to survive up in the jungle. Talking rock bottom from the gutter. I used to get in trouble, but now I'm beyond the struggle.
Hey everybody, it is Mark with Beyond the Struggle. I am here this morning with Carl, and Carl is going to give his testimony to us. And how you doing, Carl?
Good.
So what we're going to do here is we're just going to start off from the beginning of, pretty much as far back as you can remember, where either things were good or things weren't good. Your choice. You know what I mean? You go back, you start where it all started bad for you, or you could go back, start where it was good, and then get into the bad, or just tell us the good. It don't matter. It's your call, brother.
Well, it started off bad as far back as I can remember. I do remember, and it's funny, because I'm 62 years old now, and I can remember when I was 3, maybe 4 years old, my mom leaving my dad, and I don't remember much before that. She moved out to Long Beach, California, and very shortly thereafter, she hooked up with this guy. Maybe a year after that, and this guy at first he was all right, but then he started abusing me, not sexually, but because my mom used to tell me I was handsome and I looked like my dad, and that dude evidently he had a little animosity toward that, and by him telling me that he knew my mom still had feelings for my dad, so he took it out on me. And, and then my mom got pregnant with someone else. Anyways, long story short, there was about 4 or 5 years at a very early age where I was beaten quite a bit.
How old do you think you were?
Between the ages of 4 and 6.
Okay.
And I not just beaten, but you'd bounce a 6-year-old kid off the wall by backhanding him. Eventually, it's going to do one or two things to them. It's either going to really make them violent or make them really scared and withdrawn.
Right. And
I became both. I was not really scared, but withdrawn. I didn't talk to anybody. My grades in school were terrible. I had an attitude toward everything. And something that happened to me, I remember there was this bully on the bus. I remember this like it was yesterday. And he was walking around bullying up and down the bus aisle. Bus driver tell him to sit down. He just fuck you and do his own thing,
Right.
And so the bus driver just quit telling him stuff, and he'd run around poking at people. Well, one day he chose to poke at me. He poked me in the side of my, I let him run his mouth, but the minute he put his hands on me, poked me in the side of my face, I jumped up and tackled him between the seats and commenced to pulverizing him.
Right.
That was probably one of my first violent acts. And from that point on, I turned, when my mom left that guy, he ended up dying. And I turned my violence toward my brothers and sisters. And not in a real violent way, but I turned into a bully. And I didn't see it for a long time. I turned into a bully. And I force-fed. And I guess my first act and my first experience was drugs, was baby aspirins. I force-fed my baby sister a whole bottle of baby aspirins, the orange chewables. Yeah, and they had to pump her stomach.
Yeah, that sucks.
And then I did the same thing with my little brother, and I used to sneak and eat them all the time. So those, I don't know if it's a trigger thing or if it's something that I just did because I was looking for attention.
Yeah.
I don't know. But, when I got older, anytime I played with my brother, it would always get violent.
Right.
I talked him into.
And you were the oldest?
I was the oldest.
Okay.
Of 5 kids. I was the oldest of 5. And so my mom, I think she had a problem with pain medication or whatever it was.
Excuse me.
She had some kind of disease when she was little that my grandfather brought back from World War II from overseas. He brought it back, and I think it was malaria or whatever it was. Whatever it was,
Right.
it kind of almost made my mom crippled, but it messed her up in her head.
Okay.
So I come from seeing my mom get married 7 times, and I had animosity toward my mother because she left my dad. And my dad was, as far back as I can remember, when I was allowed to see him, he was good to me. He said, "You're my first son," so on and so forth. And he would just give me high praise and tell me that I had a lot of potential. I was very smart. And my mom, on the other hand, would call me stupid. And why do I always do stupid shit? But I could go and get high praise from my dad. And then all of a sudden, my mom, because she was with that guy that was abusing me, he had a problem with it. They took me away from my dad, and so I think maybe that was part of why I was trying to cover up what was going on in here.
Yeah.
And up
Some
here.
animosity.
Yeah, I had animosity, a lot of it, and a lot of pent up anger that I used against my siblings, and when I started going to school and seeing things, I started using it there. I didn't turn to drugs. I didn't actually start really doing drugs until I was 14 years old. When I got into high school, I started smoking angel dust. My first stint with any kind of drugs other than the baby aspirins was I smoked a little weed with one of my uncles one night, and I really didn't like the marijuana. But when I smoked that angel dust, which is PCP, I loved that.
Yeah.
I love that. I've never really I never smoked cigarettes. Even to this day, I don't smoke cigarettes. And this one thing, my sister, my only other sibling that don't smoke cigarettes is my sister Juanita. And, not to change the subject, but she grew up to be really good, even after all the abuse her brother gave her, and right now, I used to defend them. My mom married another guy who choked out my baby brother. Rest in peace. He wrapped a T-shirt around his throat and he was choking him out. And I told him when my mom got with him, if you touch my brother or any of my brothers or sisters, then you're going to have to deal with me. And he laughed at me. And I'm like, okay, just trust and believe me. If I'm telling you it, it's going to happen. And he did. And I took off on him. I choked him out. And I was, my mom had us, I went out there with them to take care of my brothers and sisters. And my mom, I left home when I was 16. I ran away looking for my dad. I found my dad. And my dad was drinking really bad. And I went out drinking with my dad to a bar. And I decided I'm going to go to my uncle's instead. So I went from Fort Worth, Texas to Amarillo, Texas.
And you're 16.
When I was 16. And when I got to Amarillo, I met a woman that was 25 years old, and I told her I was 19.
Nice.
And she worked in a bar, and I started drinking a lot. And I smoked marijuana every now and then. Marijuana was never one of them things for me. But I was no longer doing any other drugs. But I started drinking a lot. And then I left and went back to California to my grandparents' house. And that's when I started getting involved I was taking Black Beauties, which was my first little experience with speed. And I was still violent, Before I was 16, between the ages of, I think I was 11 or 12, I started boxing because I lived in a neighborhood where there was a lot of gangbangers. And I was one of 2 white families that lived in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
And it was all bad. It was all bad for a white boy in that neighborhood. But I wasn't one of them white boys who's just going to lay down and let people pick on me. So, needless to say, it caused a lot of repercussions, and they weren't good ones at times.
Right.
But I wouldn't run, and so I got beat up a lot. And it never one time was one of them beat me up. It would be 3 or 4. So it kind of turned me into, in some weird way, I kind of started to like it. I liked fighting. I liked it. You know, especially when I got high and I was drinking. I wanted to fight. That's all I wanted to do was fight.
Right.
So, you know, I wasn't a fight or flight guy. I was a fight guy. I wouldn't run. I wouldn't run. I'd take my beatings and wake up the next morning and sometimes not remember what happened. Sometimes, I mean, when I started doing speed, I wouldn't wake up because I was already awake.
Yeah.
I was already awake for days and days and days. You know, and I'm not glorifying it. I'm just saying a lot of things that had happened in my life, I learned from them. And so I thought I got better. And I'm not saying necessarily that I learned the right things.
Right.
But I thought I was learning the right things because I was raised by the streets.
Right.
You know, even though I had grandparents, I had a mother. My mother let me just do whatever I wanted. So when I got with my grandparents, and my grandparents raised me for a while, you know, after a while, I just didn't like the way I was being. You know, you can't go out after this time, and you can't go out after that time. So I would sneak out my bedroom window.
And this is still when you're about, what, 16, 17?
Yeah, no, I was younger.
Young? Oh, this is back when you were 11, 12.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm skipping around here.
Yeah. I got you.
So when I got my driver's license, at, I think back then I was 15 when I first got my permit. I started stealing my grandpa's truck, my grandpa's car. He had a little Volkswagen. And those little Volkswagens, you could put $3, $35 in them and drive them all night.
Yeah.
And that's what I was doing. You know, I was taking Black Beauties, drinking and driving my grandpa's Volkswagen. And then I would push it out of the driveway, push it down the street, and then push start it because I didn't have a key.
Right.
But it did, those old Volkswagens didn't have lock steering wheels, so I could steal his car anytime I wanted.
Right.
And one day, my grandpa, he used to drink this rock gut whiskey whenever he'd get drunk. But, you know, I will say this. My grandfather, he worked his ass off to take care. He took care of my mom and us kids because my mom was always messing up and ended up sending us to my grandparents' house. And when that wasn't happening, they were sending her money to try to get her out of her wrecks. And so I guess being self-destructive is something I learned from a very early age.
Right.
You know, so I didn't even realize that's what I was doing with my life. I just thought, well, this is just the way life's supposed to be.
Yeah, that sucks.
So I started going to prison. When I started going to prison, you know, I got into the prison politics thing.
Let's go back to where you're at in Texas real quick before you jump into that stuff.
When I was 16.
So you're about 16 in Texas.
17.
You took off over there. You met this chick. She's older.
Yeah.
You're 16. You told her you're 19. She's 25-ish.
Right. Well, I ended up getting in a lot of trouble out there. She ended up, I had a job. I had me a job. And
who are you staying with out there?
her and I had our own apartment.
Oh, but you're underage. Though.
I was with my uncle. But my uncle's, let me back up a little bit. My uncle's wife didn't like me because, I don't know, for whatever reason, she told him I don't want him here. I don't want him here. And they lived out in the middle of nowhere. So
it's almost understandable.
I wasn't a very likable guy right back in the days. But, and that's one thing, just to change subject just a little bit, that's one thing that I can give praise on my life today, is that people like me now. They like who I've become. A lot of people, if they'd have known me back then, they probably wouldn't have given me the opportunity that I have today. Right. I'm surprised that you and Henry have, and I was like, yeah, those are really my brothers, know.
I've known you for 30 years, so I think I could.
Exactly. And I'm just like, wow, they put up with me back then. And I got to accept that gratitude. I mean, I got to be grateful for that and accept that offer to better my life. And it wasn't that my life wasn't okay. I mean, at the end before I came out here, this. But anyways, we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
But anyways, so the girl left me.
Okay.
I come home. I went out. I was drinking with my friends on paydays, but I would come home and give her all my money. Well, she had cleaned the bank out, and she took my money, and she left. Mm-hmm. She left me high and dry. Well, I kept my job, but her mom owned the trailer we lived in. We had moved out of the apartment. Now we're in a trailer. But her mom owned it, her grandma, and her grandma was sitting there, and she had a pistol in her lap. This is like an old Western type thing. And she's in a rocking chair sitting right across from me. I'm passed out on the couch. I woke up, and I'm like, hey, where's Vicky? And she said, she's gone. And I'm like, what do you mean she's gone? She said, she went back to her mama. and you need to get out by morning. So I ended up, and there was snow. It gets, anybody knows anything about Amarillo, Texas, in the wintertime, there's ice on the ground and on everything around. And it stays like that all through winter. And it was cold. Fortunately, I had a friend, my friend Timmy. He was a better friend than I thought he was and he let me sleep in his car, because he lived with his parents, and he let me sleep in his car for a couple of weeks, and then I got me an apartment, just long enough to put a couple checks away, and then I got me an apartment, But I was still drinking. I'd go out and drink and come home, come back to the car drunk and crawl. But it helps me to make it through that cold, because it was cold in there, you know. But having that alcohol in me kept me warmer,
right?
And I would always wake up. I had a little wind-up alarm clock inside the car, and I'd always wake up. And sometimes Timmy would come out and wake me up, take me in the house, give me breakfast, and then send me off to work, So he was a good friend. But anyways, I went back to California, and that's when my drug abuse got worse. I started.
How old were you then?
I was almost 18, and I came back out here, and I went to Norwalk first, because that's where I was having all the problems at first. I went out there, and I ended up, there was a shot caller for a gang out there who remembered me from high school, and he was trying to punk me, so I beat him and one of his little homies up at the same time, and they didn't like it, so they were trying to shoot me. But I was on drugs. I was. You remember when I was on drugs, I was pretty high strung.
Yeah.
It kind of made me a little more wiry than normal. But and I had very little tolerance for dumb shit. So anyways, fast forward, I left. I went to Texas, and I really started getting into drugs bad. I started shooting dope.
Okay, so you left Norwalk.
I left Norwalk because
took off
they were trying to kill me.
So you took off back to Texas.
Yeah.
Who'd you stay with over there?
My grandma bought me a ticket, and she says, "You need to get out of here. They're going to kill you, Carl."
And you went back. Who'd you go back to Texas with?
This time I went to Dallas, Texas. Okay. And I went there with a friend of mine that I knew from high school. Okay. He said, "Hey, my mom's out here. Come out here, man. And, I got a good job. My boss will hire you." So I went out there working as a painter. There's an old cliche out there in Texas that all painters are tweakers. And it's true. It's very true. We'd work 3 days straight. No sleep. All day, all night. Take our little breaks, go back to work. Then we'd sleep for 2 days and go work for 3 days straight again. And I had a boss who was actually cooking out there. So part of my pay was drugs. So, I would get a third of my paycheck was drugs, and then I would use those drugs and to keep my money flowing. And the other part of my paycheck, I was drinking. So I was drinking, shooting dope, and it got worse. I came back to California, and I hooked up with a girl. I was in Lancaster now. I hooked up with a girl that, we were together for a while. Together for a while. I skipped past my son and his mom, and that's just something I don't want to talk about with that situation. I love my son, and my son loves me, but there was no love with me and his mom. When I came, I will go back to that just for briefly.
Sounds good.
I came back, and I was still drinking. I quit doing drugs for a short time, and she was my mom's friend. That should have been my first clue. Yeah, because my mom let me stay with her when I first came back.
Because you were clean.
Until I got my own place.
Because you were doing good.
Well, because she knew I wanted to get away from the lifestyle I was living in Texas. Right. And I called her from out there and told her, "Mom, I can't do this no more. I'm getting too high. I'm just like, my life's going nowhere. I'm digging myself a hole." She said, "Well, come out here to Lancaster. I'll help you." Anyways, I hooked up with her friend. It was a one-night thing, and I'm like, because we were drinking together, and I told her, "Hey, can you have kids?" She says, "No." And so right after we had sex, she says, "I want to have your baby." I'm like, "Whoa, that's something." No, I'm cool. So, anyways, a month later, she comes and tells me she's pregnant. I'm like, this girl duped me into getting her pregnant. Yeah. And she was 10 years older than me. 12 years older than me. So, anyways, trying to be the good guy, I tried to do the right thing, and that didn't work out at all, and I got her pregnant again. But I've never, I never wanted to be with her, and I told my son, I love you. The greatest thing that happened with whatever went on between me and your mom was you and your brother.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the only good thing that happened, actually. Everything else was just like, what am I doing?
Right.
But I wasn't in my right mind. And that's the thing about being, when you're on drugs and drinking too much, you don't make good decisions, and that's mild by comparison,
Right.
So anyways, after her and I split up and I hooked up with this other girl, we were together for a year, and somebody tried to rape her, but I was getting in a lot of fights. Her and I would walk down the boulevard, because back in those days, Lancaster Boulevard was like a cruising, it's hard to believe because it was an old country town type in the desert, which
Yeah.
But anyways, back in them days, you walk down the street, her and I would park the car and walk up and down the street. I was getting in fights left and right there. I'd go to Little Rock Dam, I was getting in fights left and right. And just because I liked it.
Right.
Like I said at the beginning of this, I really liked fighting. Well, one night, her and I got in a fight, an argument. She hit me upside the head with a box full of tapes, because the cassette tape era, and because she swore up and down, she saw me get in a limo with these dudes that were in a rock band. I don't know if you remember the rock band out there, Red Line. But anyways, she swore up and down she seen me get in a limo. And I didn't. I was out working on my car at a friend's house out at Planet G, which nobody on here would understand that other than anybody that lived out there, Avenue G Trailer Park. Anyways, I was out there, working on my car, putting new seats in it. And I came in to show her, and that's when she hit me upside the head. And I told her, go. If you think I've been out screwing somebody, go out and get you some wiener. Go handle your business. So she leaves. When she leaves, this dude starts following her and tried snatching her in his car. In the end, I catch this dude, and I beat him with a lead pipe. I left him for dead, laying on the side of the road. Just so happens he wasn't, and he knew somebody who knew my girlfriend's brother, and my girlfriend's brother is hyping it all up, and tells this guy. He goes to the hospital to visit this guy in ICU and tells him, "Hey, I know who did this to you." And they come to my girlfriend's. I was hiding at my girlfriend's house, and because I was afraid, I hid my car somewhere else. And they came and they freaking raided the house and snatched me up. So I'm sitting, and I was arrested for attempted murder, but when I went to my first court date, they dropped it down to assault with a deadly weapon. So to give you my little history on all that, I ended up in prison. I decided I'm going to fix my life. Okay. I'm not gonna live this way anymore.
And this is your first time thinking this?
It's my first time going to prison. So
no, first time thinking you're going to get your shit together.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Before I didn't even care about getting my shit together.
Right.
Other than going to my mom's.
Right.
And that was just
briefly
a ploy to start it over.
Right.
To start over. I figured, well, I'll get away from that and I'll start over, and then I'll do it all the right way.
Right.
But this time I didn't want to do any of that anymore. I started reading the Bible. I started trying to get close to God, and I did get close to God. And I felt like they were trying to give me 12 years, and it got knocked right in half. I went to trial because it was 12 years. I've never, I'm like, the only time I ever did, I've only been in youth authority one time as a kid, and that was my first stint with becoming a prison gang member. And I really wasn't. I was part of a clique, but I wasn't a gang member at that point. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, but it's something that was stuck in the back of my head, something that my subconscious was probably looking to build on.
Right.
I don't know, but because consciously I wasn't thinking about it. But when I got to prison, I went to this one yard, and I ended up from that yard. I was smoking a lot of weed on that yard. At first I was close to God, but when I started smoking weed again, I wanted to fight all the time, and I didn't want to be there on that yard because of certain situations.
Right.
So I got my wish. I ended up in the hole at Palm Hall. Anybody who knows anything about Palm Hall in California, Chino, it wasn't nothing nice. It wasn't nothing like.
Right.
And the only other one that was even close to that was Sycamore, which are it's the other side of Palm Hall, and they called it Stickamore because everybody was getting stabbed in there.
Right.
Fortunately, they didn't put me over there, but it's still you're slammed
And
down.
how old are you at this time?
At that time, I was 24.
Okay.
I was 24. This is why I'm fast forwarding.
Yeah.
If I told you everything that went on,
Yeah.
you'd be like,
No,
wow.
I get it.
Because in between that,
And there's a million stories in between.
When I met her, I was a maintenance guy at the Antelope Valley Inn, and I used to sell drugs out of the rooms.
Right.
Somebody would page me. I would call them where they're at, tell them what room I'm in. I would get a work order, go to that room, start working on it, and they would show up and slide me the money. I'd slide them in the bag, and they'd be on their way. That's how I supported my habit.
Yeah.
You know, so
when you're in prison right now, you think you want to get your life together. This is the second time.
Mm-hmm.
You get in there, kind of not really change your mind, but for the better, you say you end up smoking weed and you're like, man, what the hell,
Yeah.
right?
I went back to my old way of thinking.
Right.
My
That quick.
violence, it all started flaring back up, coming back up.
And you're not even on the street to show the relapse. You're in prison where we probably shouldn't be. Yeah. Right. It's insane to think these things. It's weird. So you're in there, you're doing your time. Do you ended up with a 6-year sentence? Is that what you're saying?
I ended up with a 6-year sentence.
Okay.
And with halftime, because they gave you halftime.
Right. For the most part.
And I ended up doing 4.5 years on a 6-year. It should have been 3 years, 4 months, I believe it was. Yeah. But I ended up with an.
But you decided not to make it easy for yourself.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
I don't know if I decided that. It's the way it ended up.
So you get out. You then from where?
Right. From there, I got out and I went. My mom had a place. And I was talking to my brother, and my brother was living in San Bernardino.
Okay.
And my mom lived in Phelan, which is east. I think it's east of the Antelope Valley.
Oh, okay, yeah. I think I know.
What I mean?
Phelan,
Phelan Hills, Hesperia.
Yep.
Yeah. Victorville,
I know,
all out in that area. So I decided, okay, well, maybe if I get out of Lancaster, away from the old circle, maybe I can fix my life out there. But God, it was just as bad out there. There was so much. You're in the desert.
See, and that I want to add on that because a lot of these, when I'm doing these interviews, that's the thing is what I've been sharing with everybody is it's crazy because we think that this geographical change is going to change you. You know what I'm saying?
What's inside of us?
It's you. You know what I mean? It's me. It's you. That's not. I mean, the drugs are everywhere, but it's you. You know what I mean? You could have went to China. You're gonna find it. You know what I mean? You could go. You go anywhere, and you're gonna. It's you, and that's the crazy part. Because I always hear almost every single story that somebody's using is always saying, "Well, I took off to Iowa to get my shit together, but I started using again." It's like, you know what I mean? It's you. You could go anywhere. You weren't ready. You know what I mean?
Subconsciously, I never stopped using.
Yeah.
I mean, I got out, and I think the trigger for me on this one was I had it in my head. I'm not doing this no more. Right. I don't want to live this kind of lifestyle. I'm going to end up in here, and with the way my brain works, I'm never going to get out.
Right.
After having to do an extra year on my sentence, I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing?
Right.
What am I doing? So my brother picks me up. I got off the level 3/level 4 yard in Corcoran. That's when that place was still good. I have to clarify that. But anyways, he picks me up. They're taking us in the van out there to get our rides. And my brother's, it's cold. He's got a tank top and he's wearing cut off, ripped up shorts. And I took one look at him and everybody on the van is going, look at that tweaked out dude. And I'm like, that's my brother. I'm like, oh my God. So I get out and my brother's, I give him a hug. I'm like, what's going on, man? He's like, bro, we need to talk. So we drive away and he's like wanting to talk to me, but he's going, shh, and he's pointing at his radio. Mm. And this is like, this should have been a clue for me not to do this anymore. So we get out of his car and walk away from his car, and he tells me that the government's trying to get his daughters, and and I'm like, what are you talking about? Child Protective Service? He says, no, they want to go and study them. And then I'm like, what do you, Bob, dude, you burn out some gears, bro. You need to stop doing that shit.
Yep.
So anyways, I was okay. I was clean for about a week. And I met this dude at a bar. There's one of my biggest mistakes. I'm already going back to the bar. And alcohol, back then for me, was a big trigger. It was a big trigger. If I would drink, I wanted to use, you know, and I maybe it wasn't a trigger. Maybe I just used it as a vice.
Right.
I'm thinking I used it more as a vice than, you know, people call certain things triggers. That trigger theory to me is it's kind of iffy.
Okay.
It's wishy-washy. It just sounds like more of an excuse. So for me, drinking was an excuse for me to go get high. You know, because I enjoy being high and drinking. I enjoyed it.
Right.
You know, then I did. But anyways,
so you're out now. You're back in, we'll say Barstow. We'll just
so
call
I
it
go to
Barstow.
yeah. So anyway, I go. Well, Barstow's quite a bit of ways. We'll say Victorville.
Victorville. All right.
So anyways, I'm in the bar and I meet this dude. And this dude's he's hella cool. He takes me out to El Mirage, the dry lake bed where everybody drag races. And he's got a nice little souped up Nova. And he says, hey, bro, you want to drive it? You know, he could tell I was an ex-convict, you know, and he's just by my mentality. And it's weird how, you know, people in Cali, this dude's never been locked up. People in Cali that's been around, in any amount of people in that lifestyle, can always tell guys like us.
Right.
Because we have a certain way of carrying ourselves, I guess. So anyways, we hit it off. He let me drive his car. He said, dude, what are you afraid to get on it? I'm like, all right. So I had that thing up to 120. It was a fast little car.
Right.
And I slammed on the brakes and got it spinning around because it's a dry lake bed.
Yeah.
He's like, dude, you're doing too much.
And you're just off and running again already.
Well, yeah, he got me high. And then I meet this girl, and that was the worst part. I met this girl. She had these pink dittos on, but when she turned around, I mean, she was pretty, but you could tell she was spun. And I'm like, there's a free ride for me.
Right.
So at first there was nothing going on with us other than drug transactions. And then it got to the point, I got so bad where I was making this girl turn tricks to get me drugs. You know, I worked at Mountain High Ski Resort, and it got to where she was kind of a psycho. She was kind of stalking me and thinking I was screwing everybody that wiggled by me, you know, and I couldn't. I had sex with her twice a day. I mean, to be with somebody else would be just like insane, especially with her personality. She was really messed up. And being with her for a short amount of time really messed me up.
Right.
So I called my brother. My brother's in San Bernardino.
How old are you at this time?
At this time, let's see, I did 4.5 years. I think I was like 20. This was like 20. It was like right before I met you guys.
Okay.
I think I was 28 at the time. Let's see, 4 years. I was 29. I did a parole violation, and when I got out after that violation, I met you guys, and I ended up right back in, as you well know.
Yeah.
I was like, it was like in and out for me all the time.
Right.
You know, so I had, God, how many years? 25 years, 24 years in and out through that revolving door.
Right.
You know, and the drugs were just, I can blame it on the drugs, but in the end, bad decisions.
Right.
You know, the decision to make drug or make myself think that I could do drugs and handle it this time was just a never-ending cycle as well.
Right.
And that cycle put me in that revolving door and kept me locked up. And the problem is every time I'd get in there and try to stay clean and come out, when I would stay clean, it wasn't working because all I was doing was getting myself healthy again so that I come out and get high all over again. And that's what was in my head. I'll just go in there, I'll get healthy, get my head right for a little while, and then when I get out, I'll be on top of my game. And that's the problem.
You're always back on top of the same game.
The same game. It was okay for a minute, and then it just went all to hell in a handbasket.
Yeah.
Sometimes there was times, I shit you not, I got out once, and I was out 4 days. I was out 11 days. I was out 14 days. You know, and this was at the end of everything I did. You know, at the end of my addiction, it was just, I would stay clean. I hid it. This last time, okay, so I don't know how far should I skip forward a little bit.
Yeah, it's
you
fine.
know?
Yeah, whatever.
But I mean,
We right now we're getting the logistics of where you're at in your life. You know what I'm saying? I
right.
mean,
Well, I'm starting to get in my life at this point. Every time I go in, I'm like, what am I doing?
right.
What am I doing? You
The
know,
one the want to get right is there, but it's just
well,
it's hard to put into play.
yeah, because because it's that euphoria. You
Yeah.
miss that euphoria, and
Yeah.
your endorphins, and people don't quite understand what drugs do to your endorphins. Your endorphins saturate whatever it is those drugs are in them drugs. Your endorphins saturate that, and so the minute you see it, feel it, you're around it, them endorphins start going off, and part of it is your thinking, your mental state of mind. You know, if
Yeah.
you don't convince yourself, I'm either going to die or end up in prison the rest of my life if I don't stop this, just say, hey, you know what, I can do this. I can use a little bit, and you know, I'll be all right. Because you know what, a little bit becomes more and more.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's an old rock song.
Yep.
You know, but it's so true. It's so true, and I'm living proof that there's no future in getting high. There's not. People are dying left and right that are 20 years younger than me because they don't want to stop. They don't want to stop doing drugs. They think it's okay. It's okay. Well, I only do it a little bit. I only do this a little bit. I only do it every now and then.
Right.
Well, what's every now and then? Once a day. That's not every now and then. That's not every now and then. Well, I do it to wake up. No, because pretty soon you're going to do it to wake up, and after a while you're going to do it to go to sleep
Right.
or something else to go
Right.
to sleep. You know, because I've been down that road too. I was addicted to morphine. You know, I've done heroin. I smoked, like I said, I smoked Sherm at a very young age. So I had a twisted thought process. I had a real twisted thought process. But then I had somebody, the fortunate part is that one of these times in my prison stint, I had somebody telling me something. And I don't remember exactly how he put it, but he told me something that made me think of my dad. You know, it made me think of my dad. Something that my dad used to tell me, that I'm very smart and strong, that I got good blood running through my veins, and that I could be successful. I never thought, because I listened to my mom all these years telling me how worthless I was, and you know, I never thought that I was worth a damn.
Right.
You know, I thought, you know, and I guess subconsciously, even though I didn't think that way, consciously, because I always thought I always thought you know, and I got it figured out. And you know what, I
I
did.
think we think all that. I think we all
Yeah.
think that at some point
I
we
got
got
it
it.
figured out. And, you know, we don't have it figured out, especially if we don't try to fix what we're doing.
Right.
And I wasn't trying to fix what I was doing. I would do it for a short time and then go right back to the old shit.
Okay.
So to fast forward now, when I ended up going, 6 prison terms. I got the assault with a deadly weapon and great bodily injury, and then I ended up with a GTA, which people knows I liked taking cars. It started when I was very young. I shared that about taking my grandpa's car.
Right.
So, you know, it's not like I did it on purpose to be a thief. I always felt like I deserved it.
Right.
And when I would buy a car, the cops would take it from me. So I decided I'd take cars from everybody else. You know, I got to the point where I would buy cars. I didn't care if they were stolen or were registered. I just knew the cops were going to take them anyway. So I'll just take whatever I can get for now.
Right.
You know, it got to that point. And then I, you know, I ended up with parole violation after parole violation, you know, and I ended up I got one of my parole violations. My parole officer came, I was doing Scared Straight. And I got out, and I, believe it or not, I was actually clean for 15 months. For 15 months, I got out and I stayed clean, and they wouldn't let me on parole. And it was like a trigger for me. I was like, "You're not going to let me off parole? No, you're a repeat offender. You got violence. You got to do at least 2.5 years." I'm like, "What?" So I left that parole office and I went out hunting me down a sack, and decided I'm going to do whatever I want. You know what I mean? They're just going to keep me on parole anyway. I might as well. Tell me that ain't a twisted thought process.
Absolutely, it is.
So, I mean, in my mind, I was like, I'll teach them.
Right.
But I wasn't teaching anybody anything except myself how to be stupid. And I was already pretty good at that. So I didn't need to do that anymore. But then, I caught a prison term for a robbery I didn't even do. And I was out of prison. That's when I was out for 14 days. I got out of prison for 14 days. And I went somewhere and I got high. I wasn't going to get high. I was just going to go see some old homies. And, in my mind, I guess the back of my mind, I was. But in the front of my mind, I was like, I'm not going to get high. I just want to go say hi.
Crazy. It's so crazy because every time we go to prison, every time we go to jail, until that gate door opens, we were never going to get high again. You know what I mean? Like, it was like all the intentions were there because we were locked up. And then you get locked up and you sit back and think to yourself, like, as soon as I hit the streets, like, you know what I mean? Like, I remember when I got to prison, I was like, I'm not doing none of this. I'm on the bus. I'm done with this. I don't ever want to see that place again. Shit wasn't even, you know what I mean? A few months later, I'm back doing the same bullshit again. So it's like,
I know. Yeah, I kind of skipped over some stuff when I got busted, and I was doing Scared Straight, and that happened to me at the parole office. Well, I was doing Scared Straight at that time, and I ended up going out. When I went out and got high, not only did I get high, but I bought a case of beer and an ounce of mushrooms, and I split that ounce in half and ate a half ounce of mushrooms along with all that. So for 2 days, and I had my girlfriend's car at the same time. So I didn't take her back her car.
Nice.
I went out to somebody else's house and I stayed out there for 2 days. And finally, I guess my ex-girlfriend's sister knew that some people that were out there, and I'm like, yeah. She said, and she knew my girlfriend, and she was like, have you seen Carl? He's like, yeah, he's been out here for 2 days. That motherfucker stole his girlfriend's car. I didn't steal it. I was just too high to take it back.
Yeah.
So the cops came out there deep, and I seen them coming up the drive. It's a desert road. They're driving all the way up to this house, and I bolt out the back door. I've got Bermuda shorts on, Vans with no socks,
Nice.
and no shirt. I bolted out the back door, ran across the desert, and jumped in a heaping pile of tumbleweeds. That tumbleweeds have stickers, but it didn't bother me. I'm laughing because I'm so high on mushrooms, and drinking and the speed, and I'm doing that was dumb. It was dumb. And I'm there laughing, and I'm thinking I'm being quiet about it, giggling, thinking they'll never find me. And they surrounded the field and closed in on me, and they just started kicking the shit out of me. They beat the bark off of me, and I'm laughing at them the whole time while they're beating the bark off of me, and they got me in cuffs.
That's crazy, man.
And they're dragging me. Yeah, it's crazy. It's stupid shit we do. And they're dragging me, and the whole time I'm telling them, you motherfuckers hit like bitches. And then I see my girlfriend, and she's crying. So I start crying.
Yeah.
And I'm in the back of the police car, and they're like, you feel good about yourself stealing that girl's car? I'm like, I didn't steal it. I'm just too high. I'm telling them I'm too high. I don't give a fuck. You're going to send me to prison anyway. So I went to prison for doing that, for taking her car. And she thought I did her dirty. And I really wasn't intending to do her dirty. I did myself dirty.
Right.
I did myself dirty because, that's why she liked me. That's why she liked me, because I was doing so good for myself. And I was doing this Scared Straight program, talking to kids and trying to get them out of, get them away from doing the shit that kept getting me into prison.
Right.
You know,
It's easy to give the advice. It's hard to take it. Yeah.
But I was doing good, and I could actually share with them. And I had written an inventory list and burned it with my sponsor, and was in a program and going to meetings and just to me and in meetings, you know. And I'm not knocking it because it works for a lot of people, but I would hear people come in there day in and day out talking about their chicken shit lives. And how they've been clean for such and such amount of years, and none of them have jobs, and they hate this about their life and hate that about their life. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, go do a fucking shot then. Go do something that's going to fucking fix it. Because you're not fucking trying to get a job. If you've been clean that many years and you're not getting a job, you're not fixing your life.
Yeah.
If you're not trying to better yourself in your sobriety, you're not fixing your life. All you're doing is you're being complacent. You're just standing in one place, not moving forward. And eventually, you're going to fall backwards.
Right.
You have to keep moving forward. This is something I've learned. So anyways, I ended up back in prison, you know. And that's when I started to rethink. What, you know, not right away.
Right.
Because when I was in the county, you know how it is with LA County Jail, you know, you're just trying to deal with the politics and, you know, keep from getting caught up, but yet you have to be caught up. You know, it's just dumb.
Right.
Real
same
dumb.
old shit.
Yeah, same old shit. So, but when I get to prison, that's when I met the dude that told me, you know, he told me something that clicked with me about that with my dad. So I started rethinking my life. And I got out and I went right back to drugs. Because I think it was like I didn't want to look at my life at that point. Now I don't want to look at my life at all.
Right.
Because I've already ruined it. And then somebody else told me something one day on the streets while I was high. He told me it's never too late, Carl. I'm like, how do you even know me? Somebody I didn't even know.
Yeah.
How do you even know me? He says, oh, I know everything about you. He's a biker. I know everything about you. You know, and I'm like, you don't know anything about me. Oh, yeah, I know everything about you. So I know where you were born. Come to find out, he knew my uncle. But I never knew this dude. My uncle was a nomad. You know, he lives in Oklahoma now, but he lived in San Pedro at the time. And he's my uncle, same uncle that got me high for the first time. You know, and there was times that I would go to his house when he was trying to get clean, and now I'm messing him up. You know, he worked at Todd's Shipyard. I'm messing him up. I'm going there on the weekend and getting him high. You know, and then I just stopped going there because he didn't seem like the same uncle anymore. You know, and I recently talked to him too. And he's doing really good. I'm really proud of him. But he's like 80 years old, so you know, he better be doing good.
Yeah. So let's go from where you're at. So you're in and out of prison pretty much the whole time, all through the 90s, because I was there, so I know you're in and out of prison the whole time, doing the same shit. Go to prison to get your term, come out. A couple days later, you're getting high again, back with the homies, doing the same bullshit.
Yeah.
Let's fast forward from that point to the point where the day you decided you were done. Let's go to that point. Where you were like, you know what, I'm not talking about where you said you were done and then, you know, 6 months later you pick back up or 3 months later you pick back up. I'm saying the day, because I remember you calling me distinctly saying you were done, and I remember talking to you
when I got out of the joint.
When you got out of the joint, right?
Yeah.
And I remember you then, and then you relapsed one more time after that.
Yeah.
And then for a short time, and then I remember you saying, "Dude, I'm fucking done," right?
Yeah.
So let's pick up from that second done, because the first one you were like, you got out. I remember you were talking on the phone, and you were like, "Bro,
well,
I can't keep doing this shit."
That up to why I went to prison in 2003. 2003, I got locked up. I tried to help a girl out, and I was done when I got out right before that. But I started using with her. Her kids and her were in a wreck. I moved them to the Valley, got a house through a friend of mine that I was locked up with, who had, you know, he had Indian money, so he was helping me out. But I was writing bad checks. I ran a lot of bad checks through Bank of America. I frauded them out of $18,000, and I was actually living high off the hog. But that hog turned around on me and turned out to be a wild boar, and it bit me in the ass. So now I'm sitting in prison or sitting in jail, facing a life sentence for a forgery. They're trying to give me a life sentence. For 2 years, I sat in a county jail, and I got close to God, and God opened my eyes up, the eyes of my heart, to see what I've been doing, and I could hear my dad's voice, and I could hear the voice of that man, and the voice of that biker who might have just been an angel. He said he knew my uncle. Who knows? All I know is those are the voices I'm hearing now. I'm no longer hearing the voices of somebody telling me, you know what, you're solid. You know what, you got heart. You can do this. You can do that. You know what? I'm not hearing those voices anymore. I don't, and that's our problem. So sometimes we listen to those negative voices. It's easier to grasp that negativity when that's all you've known, right, than it is to grasp something positive, because it's a struggle. It's a struggle to do positive things. It's a struggle to stay positive at times. But you just got to tell yourself, you know what? I'm better than any obstacle put in front of me. And I can leap tall buildings at a single bound. Right. My last name's Snyder. I got an S on my chest. Right. But it's a different type of S. It's crazy, man. You're sitting in there. I sat in that county jail for 2 years, and I called my mom. I finally, got my mom. My brother told me, you need to call mom. I'm like, why? She just wants to talk to you. And my mom tells me that she's got cancer, and they've only given her a year to live. So now I have to face the reality that I need to tell my mom that, Mom, my life's over too. They're going to give me 25 to life. I'm never going to see you again. And that was really hard. But it changed me. It changed me. And then I got out, and I was clean for, God, how many years was I clean? I never used the whole time I was locked up. Not once. Smoked weed, nothing. I decided I'm done. I'm done with that lifestyle. I got out, and I got with somebody that I had loved for a long time. And when that fell apart with her, it sent me over the edge. When I knew she was done with me, I was done with my life.
You ended up losing your mom?
Well, yeah, my mom died while I was in prison.
Right.
My grandma died while I was in prison. And I already thought my dad was dead for all these years. When I got out of prison, I get this text from this girl on Facebook. And it's a girl named Carla Earhart. Well, I don't recognize the last name. I know I have a sister named Carla on my dad's side. So she tells me, she says, hey, do you have a dad named Carl? I'm like, yeah, I'm Carl Jr. I am Carl Sr. She says, oh my God, I think you're my dad. I'm like, no, I don't have no kids in Texas, but I do, but it's not a daughter. And she's like, no, that was a misprint. I think we have the same dad, is what it was supposed to say. Mm. I'm like, really? I'm like, well, do you have a sister named Leah? She said, yeah, Brian and Joey, those are my stepbrothers. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, oh my God, I haven't seen you since we were little. We were way little. She was a baby. She's like, I don't even remember you. I just know that Dad always talked about you and said that you got a big brother, and you know what, that you need to find him for me. And when she became an adult, my dad was dying. And she said, and I already assumed he was dead. And she told me, she says, Dad made me look for you. I'm like, what do you mean? He's been dead for 20 years. She says, no, he's not dead. My mom lied to me about that too. My mom told me my dad was dead because she didn't want me to go looking for him. But when I talked to my dad did nothing but have high praise for my mom. She said, look, I've always loved your mom. Your mom didn't want you to look for me because I became a drunk. He always worked. And this my stepmom, I loved my stepmom, Betty. I loved my stepmom, Betty. God, I love that woman was better, so good to me. And she loved me because of how much my dad loved me.
Right.
So, God is good. God is really good. Before my dad passed, I got to go see him. I got to see him for 2 days. And he died in my arms. That kind of chokes me up, because
Yeah.
I already thought he was dead, And I guess maybe that, I don't know, it kind of, I started wanting to come out here to Colorado. And I discussed it with my girl that I'm still with. And she was making every excuse. Oh, I don't want to go out there, blah, blah, blah. But I want to go out there. We can live a better life out there. Look what we're living in. We're living in a little shack. It was a house. It was a 2-bedroom house, but it was a shack. Like, I don't want to live like this. I'm better than this. You're better than this. And then we started having problems because of her daughter. And I raised her granddaughter like she was my own. Taught her to walk, taught her to catch a ball, taught her how to ride a bicycle. And I was grandpa. Her and my cat and my dog would run out to the gate because we had a security gate, and she would open the gate. She'd hear my truck and come running out there and open the gate for me. Happy to see her grandpa. And we'd go in the house and she'd run to. These are things, blessings.
Yeah.
Blessings. And she would run to the refrigerator and she would grab me a jug of tea because she knew I drink my tea and this is when she got older, pour me a glass of tea. When she was littler and she'd spill it all over, but I would let her, I would help her. And she'd see Nikki go and try to get in that tea. And she's like, no, that's my grandpa's tea. Just things that I remember.
Yeah.
So when Nikki and I split up, she promised she'd never keep that little girl from me. Well, her promise she didn't keep. She did everything she could to keep that little girl from me, and even convinced her that I wasn't her real grandpa, which I'm not. But for 4 years of her life, I was.
Right.
So it kind of destroyed me. Set me back. But I'm not blaming her, I'm blaming me. I should have seen that as one of them obstacles. One of those hurdles that I just need to get over. It took me a little over a year, but I got over it. And, and even before I got over it, I was working. I stayed working. I supported myself, but I knew my life wasn't right because I was using it again, and I knew it wasn't right. And then I got COVID, and I stopped working for a while. When I got COVID, while I was sick, I sat there and I reached out to God and asked him, you know what? When I'm done with this, I want to be all the way done with this. The sickness, and I have, Paul in the Bible, a lot of people probably don't want to hear about this, but Paul in the Bible had a thorn in his side. And it's something that God gave him to make him remember God, to remember where he came from and, what brought him to be who he is today. And it was his vision. If you notice when you read the Bible, it talks about written by certain other authors, but they're letters from Paul. So in those introductions to those books always tell you they're letters from Paul that Paul wrote, but somebody else, he dictated them, not wrote them, but somebody else wrote them. But he was the author of all of it. So anyways, God gives us those things, those thorns, so that we can remember, and since COVID, I haven't used. Since I got sick, I haven't used. I'm not going to use. Something in my mind clicked that I'm better. I'm better than all this. I made really good money out there. I had my own business, and I pissed it away. I pissed it away because I started using again. But once I had COVID, got over it, I went to work with a friend of mine who I was actually working for even before that, on the side. I would go on, do weekend gigs with him. And he's hired me to work with him full time, and I told him things would be good, and I would make $1,600 in 3 days doing almost next to nothing.
Right.
I mean, I was working, I was hanging roller shades and blinds, but I was making good money, $7 a blind, $7 a shade. And sometimes we would do 100 in a day, sometimes more. And then we wouldn't work. But that money was good while it was good, but when it was bad, it was real bad.
Right.
And I had to pay, I was paying my own taxes at the end of the year, so I always had to put money away. So it taught me to save. It taught me to be more responsible with my finances. But I got this other job working with Mission Linen as a janitor. And the only thing that was good about that job is I could work overtime, and I was being taught by the engineers how to work on all the rollers and fix all that stuff.
Right.
And I was servicing that stuff on the side with the engineers, and those guys liked me. So it was up to them whether one of their janitors could work overtime, and they always picked me. The guy has been there 2 years, and they never asked him to work overtime. But they let me work overtime once, and I got overtime all the time. So I was getting a good paycheck there. And
Let's take a break real quick, 2 seconds
Okay.
here.
You know what I mean? I want to be with you. I'm not going nowhere. And she didn't.
It'd be weird
Halloween.
how God put people in your lives.
I know, Halloween, there was a party. She had to be there. We were supposed to go together. Your house.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, I'll go later. I don't have to be there right away. And she laid in bed with me. She knew I was in pain, and she laid there and she held me.
These are all the good
That
things.
makes me tear up because
Yeah.
I've never, ever had
But
a
it-
relationship like that.
But it all falls, Carl, it all falls into the thing when you're doing good and you're doing the right things, good things happen. God's going to put good things in your life, brother. And it's not that you didn't have them in your life. And what I'm learning in my walk is, every single move that we make is on his time. You know what I mean? Everything that happens is on his time. And it wasn't
And
time
for his purpose.
and exactly. And it wasn't your time to have her in your life, and it's your time now. He sees you're done with what you're doing and where you're at in your life. You know what I'm saying? And you're doing great. You're doing amazing things. You know what I mean? And you're going to continue to do amazing things, and it sucks the stuff that you went through to get to this point, but you got a lot of life left in you. You know what I mean?
I've come to the conclusion that it's going to happen. Something else is going to happen because God allows things to happen to strengthen us.
Right.
This is something that it took me a long time to realize, that everything that's happened to me in my life is so that I could. It's a story, a testimony that's been given to me, not to hoard, not to hold on to, but to share with others, to give other people hope. And hopefully they won't go through what I went through. Hopefully they'll wake up right away and see, look, I don't have to go through this. Why, Carl didn't have to go through this, but Carl didn't make good decisions. If I had looked at the positive aspects of these things that were going on in my life way back when, I wouldn't have a testimony today to give to somebody else.
Right.
So God allowed me to go through these things so that I could be able to save someone's life.
Right.
Someone for his higher purpose, not for mine.
Right.
Whatever's going on in my life has a purpose.
Right.
I'm where I'm at today because I chose to trust him. I chose to believe in myself because God believed in me. And he showed, and anybody who don't believe in God that's out there trying to get clean, they're going to get clean on their own terms. And they're going to come to a place in their lives. You don't know how many people that I know that didn't believe in God, who I didn't talk to for years, and all of a sudden they believe in God. My own brother, he did not believe in God. Now he believes in God. He got clean. And he's got a great job. He works. He's a chief coordinator, maintenance coordinator for 3 different Burlington warehouses in California. He started off being a third in command, or not a third, but a third link in the maintenance department.
Right.
But when God blessed him, and in 2 years he rose the ranks, and now he's the head guy out of all of them.
Right.
You know, so I mean that just tells me, you know what? Just because you're a Snyder don't mean you're a dumbass, like our mom told us. You know,
Yeah.
it didn't affect my brother like it did me.
Right.
I mean, he got into drugs and he became what he became, but he did 1 prison sentence, you know, because he was in the military, but he knew a little bit more about discipline than I did.
Yeah. We all learn. Some of us take the longer route, you know.
Yeah.
But look at you now. You know, you're doing great things. So what I would like to do, bro, if you don't mind, what I would like to do is with some of these interviews I've been doing, you know, I think you're like 4 or 5 years in now, you know, and I know you just got a new job that's super awesome.
That's super awesome.
You know, what I like to do, if you don't mind, is like reach back out to you on one of these interviews, like in, I don't know, let's say 6 months, 8 months, something like that, towards the end of the year, something like that. We do there's just a little short interview, you know what I mean?
I
And
think you know where to find me.
I do, that's for sure. But, you know, I think the people, you know, when they watch these videos, you know, they got to hear all the crappy shit that you went through and all that stuff, and they kind of get a feel of where you've been and what you're doing now. But what I want to do is start getting the list of people that are, you know, got some sobriety under them, and because that's a whole nother story, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Because as we get sober, people tend to think that shit don't happen to us. That, you know, oh God, now I'm living, you know, what do they call it, this pink cloud or purple cloud or whatever the hell it is, you know, that you're going through this life and you're like, oh yeah, everything's great now. No, but not everything's always great, because a lot of shit happens when you're sober, and you don't have that cushion to, you know what I mean, to block it no more and protect you, was what we were thinking.
Well, we have the common sense to get
Right.
through it.
So what I want to do is reach out to you, and then let's visit this, like, you know, 6-8 months, and then let's do another little video about, you know, your last 5 years of sobriety. You know, we can talk about your daughter coming out here. You can talk about your grandbabies.
Oh, yeah,
You could talk about, it's a whole nother story, right?
those are blessings.
So yeah, so let's do another little video like that, and let's talk about, you know, hey, now you got sober. So what we'll do in like 6 months, we'll pick up on a thing is, now I'm sober. Let me tell you what happened. I got here to Colorado, and we'll just go into like that, and then we'll do another video. So I'll end it here. I really appreciate everything that you brought to the table, man. It's great, and I hope it really reaches out to somebody as well. You know what I mean?
Here. You know, just to round up, and then I'll shut up. Anybody out there that thinks that there's nothing for them, they're wrong. They need to start talking positive to themselves and telling themselves, I'm worthy. I'm better than this. You know what? I can do this. I can do this. It's always going to be a struggle when you first get clean. It's always going to be a little bit of a roller coaster ride, and you're always going to want to go back. But you know what? Eventually that light's going to come on, and something in your heart's going to trigger, and you're going to realize, you know what? He's right. He's right.
Yeah.
Because in all of our adversities, through all these obstacles, you have a testimony too. Everybody out there has a testimony. It's not for them to keep. And if they don't get right in their lives, they're not going to be able to save somebody else's.
Can't keep what you got if you ain't giving it
Keep what
away.
you got. Yeah, you can't keep what you got. It doesn't belong to you. It belongs to people who need it out there. You know, because my story may help some people, but some of these other people that you've talked to that have different stories, it's going to touch something in them. You know, my story may not touch those people, but their story will.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean,
I agree, man. All right, brother. Well, I'll reach back out to you. I appreciate you so much, and
No worries.
we'll bring this to an end. Thank you, guys.
all right.